examine more just how, so we're in the second quadrant, how beliefs affect, or the group you belong to affects your beliefs. So one other example of that uh, would be like the Baha'i. So the Baha'i, they adopt a belief system that's kind of contrary to fundamentalist Islam, and they'll say, yeah, we should be allowed to drink and we should be allowed to do these types of things, right? But again, what group do they belong to? They're Persian, so then they also worship basically like a Persian guy. They think the Persian guy is God, and they say that he was kind of an avatar or a mirror of God. And so what are you going to find more? You're going to find more Persian people becoming Baha'i, because they're essentially, people want to worship themselves. They want their own genes. They want themselves to be eternal, and they're going to worship something that kind of looks like themselves. So you saw that with art throughout history. Like, let's look at like European art. Like I said, the Jews gave the Roman Empire Christianity, and according to the Bible, I was the first person to discover it. It was designed to destroy the Roman Empire, but the Roman Empire adopts it, and then it goes to Europe, and it helps the Jews. It basically tells the Europeans that they have to protect the Jews and help the Jews. And I think that might have been its intention. Jesus says that he died for Israel, right, in order to bring them back, to convert the enemy. The Europeans, when they would make pictures of Jesus, how are they going to make Jesus? They make all the art with white people, because really people just want to worship themselves. They just want their own genes to be immortal, and they want, that's why they want an afterlife. And then also, these people are very focused on the preservation of themselves. They're very in the second quadrant, belief, faith, and that's their main prerogative. And they want eternal life, and they're just basically, it's essentially a genetic Darwinian desire to have eternity for their genes. But then what they're going to worship is, they're going to worship art. So they'll make artworks of Jesus, and it's always depicting Jesus as European, and it's depicting the Jews and the Israelites as Europeans, because that's what that's what they believe. But that's because they belong to that group, and your group you belong to is going to affect your beliefs. Um, so, but again, like the Baha'i, they kind of worship the Persian guy, but then they're Persians, or they're Iranian, and Iran means Aryan, so they're kind of mixed with Indo-Europeans and Arabs. So they kind of adopt policies that are contrary to a belief system that's kind of contrary to Muslim Arabs, like the Sunni Arabs. And one reason people could argue is because they want to separate from the Sunni Arabs, and that's why Iran is Shiites, because they adopt it. They say, no, we just believe this. No, but why do people believe different things? Because they belong to a different genetic group, and they want to protect and preserve their genetic group. So then their belief system, they're going to adopt belief systems that cause divisions, that separate them from the Arabs, because they're different genetic groupings, and they want to promote their own genetic group. And then also, and then they become very, very like rigid, authoritarian, like dictator oriented, kind of like Nazi oriented. And then that way that they can say, that they can make their walls, and they can say, hey, we don't want you Arabs in here, not because you're Arabs, but because you're Sunnis and we're Shiites. But that's just the smokescreen. That's fake. People could argue that the real motivation is genetic Darwinian, and that's behind all of it. And people aren't even aware of it. You see, people aren't aware of their motivations, because I'll give you an example. There's a studies that show that a man, when he sees a woman, or when he looks at faces of pictures of women, they'll show pictures of women with dilated eyes and non-dilated eyes. And dilated eyes means that a woman's attracted to you. And the men, when they look at the pictures, they point out which women they find the most attractive, and they point out at a much higher percentage of women with the eyes that are dilated. And the men aren't even aware of that's why. But it's because there's hardwiring going on, and according to evolutionary biologists, throughout genetic history, men who were more attracted to women with dilated eyes, because those were the women who were more likely to succumb to them and help them spread their genes. So people don't know what's really motivating them, and somebody could say, "Hey, I just believe Shiite Islam, and I don't like those Sunnis," and he might actually really believe it's because he has a different belief system. But underlying it, people could say it's really genetic Darwinian motivations, and they're just using the belief system to justify division. Um, so and then like I said, conservatives like they tend to look highly upon a group that's dominant, that the victimizers or the oppressors, and conservatives, that's more first and second quadrant oriented people. They blame the victim, and they'll say, and they'll like look at the evil people, the ones who are like subverting and subjugating and destroying and raping and pillaging, like the white people, and then they'll look at them and they'll say like, yeah, they must have really good genes, like my Indian friend who's a really big conservative, he's a Hindu nationalist, right? And he and he's like, yeah, oh, I love white people. Oh, I want a white girlfriend. Oh, blonde, blonde, blonde. And then the thing is, so then because they look at the victimizers and they think, yeah, they must either have they have good genes, they have good karma, um they have good energy because they're doing so well in this world. They really focus on doing well in this world. Oh, that must really indicate that they are really really superior, and they love that. But then, and like my Hindu friend, he looks down upon the Arabs and black people and says, oh yeah, they're stupid IQ, low IQ. Oh, but the white people, oh, their energy's so good. Even he'll look at fellow Indians and be like, oh, the brown people, oh, I'm not a big fan. I don't like. But then the irony is that then people could say, oh, that's he said this about the black people. He said like, oh, that black people they uh they look highly upon light skin and stuff, and that makes them easier to conquer. So he's trying to say that they're like dumb and that they themselves are superficial, and then he's trying to justify that they were conquered because of that. So he's a victim blamer, and he wants to justify the group in power, and that's what conservatives are. They blame the victims. They say it's because they're stupid, because they have dualistic consciousness, because of this, and they're very judgmental. But then they look at the group in power, the people who are the victimizers, and they go, oh yeah, good job. And then they'll say like, oh yeah, all lives matter. Like the people who are like all lives matter. The reason why they do that is in big part because I've seen it. It's a lot of the Nazi Trump supporters, and they'll say the reason why they're doing it is they're trying to say that the black people deserve what they're getting. They deserve the victimization because they're dumb and because they're dualistic consciousness, and they don't just accept everybody as one, and they don't and they don't they're not like us, and we don't see skin color, and we are like, we're enlightened beings, and we don't label people. And so they're actually, the reason why we treat them bad is because they're labeling themselves as black, and and then that's why we treat them. So a lot of these people, they'll have that judgmental consciousness, and again, it's victim blaming, and they say, well, this is why they're mistreated, because they think they're special, and that's because they're dumb, low IQ, and because they're immature, and they're tribal from Africa, and in their African tribal days, they would tribe up. I see that with some of the white supremacists. Be like, they'll show pictures of like black gang members. They'll be like, oh yeah, they're tribing up and stuff. But oh yeah, and they're not like, but really, like, people should just let go of any identities, and we should all do, that's the flow, but that's not the flow. So my grandpa would kind of say the same type of thing, but he would say that those people who are doing that's judgmental. They're in their ego as well. And the idea is sometimes there is issues that need to be addressed. So for instance, black people were oppressed and have been marginalized, and they were brutally mistreated, and then the group that mistreated them, they don't, white people don't want to say, oh, we're evil, we did bad things. So that the defense mechanism, the coping mechanism, is to say, oh well, it must be because they're inferior, and because they're evil, they're the evil ones, we weren't the evil ones, they're the evil ones. And that's what you see with like my uncle with the Jewish thing. He says, "Oh, the Jews are the Nazis." Really, when the Jews went to Israel, it was a conspiracy for Nazis. That it was a Nazi conspiracy, and and the Germans were the good guys, and they were fighting the British, who were the real Nazis, who were trying to colonize Palestine and stuff. And so he feels he belongs to the German group, so his belief systems are going to be in relationship to that. And then so it's a victim blaming thing where he's going to say, oh, we weren't the bad guys. He can't. It's hard for someone to say I was the bad guy. So they say, oh, we weren't the bad guys. We were actually the good guys. The people that we beat up, they were the bad guys, and that's what my mom and dad are doing with me. They did with me. They're trying to say they don't want to address that maybe they made mistakes and that stuff happened. So they want to say, oh, it must be they want this desperately to say, oh, it must have been because you were bad, because of you had an illness or something like that, and then they don't have to feel bad about themselves about what they did, and then. So then he can say, yeah, well, I'm not the Nazi. They're the Nazis. But then then the ironic thing is he's continuing to act like a Nazi. And the reason why the Jews did want to go to Israel was because they were being there were pogroms in Europe, and my grandpa would say, yeah, well then the Jews should have just mixed with the Europeans and let go of the Jewish identity. But even if they tried to, they weren't allowed to, because there's different genetic groups and there's conflicts and stuff. So when the Jews wanted to go to Israel, it was because they were being persecuted in Europe, and then there was the Holocaust, and then they got Israel. But then they did want to go to Israel before. So that's what my uncle's trying to say. My uncle's trying to say this is what a lot of the Germans will say is, oh, we killed the Jews because they were trying to colonize Palestine and stuff. But the Germans, it's a stupid argument, because the Germans were Nazis. They were racist. They were they were trying to basically take over the world and colonize the people too. And it's just it's a ridiculous thing. But you see why people adopt their beliefs. They belong to a group. They want to adopt beliefs that help their group, that support their group and make them feel good about themselves. So they'll say, oh yeah, the victim, they were the bad guys. They're the evil ones. And then again, there's that stereotype bias or stereotype effect, where the victim sometimes does feel bad for their persecutors. So then they'll start acting out the stereotypes, like the Indian guys in the Hare Krishna. The white guys are like, oh yeah, it's the Indian guys who are hitting on all the girls online and stuff, and especially the white girls. And maybe the Indian guys do love the white girls and stuff. They love it because a lot of these Indian guys are racist against the black people and Arab people, because they become conservative and nationalists, and then they start to have love the oppressor, the colonizer, the white people. They're the good ones with the good genes who had the good karma, and then they're hitting on the white girls, like, oh, I love the white girls. Oh, hey baby, can you see naked pictures? But they're following the stereotype, the stereotype effect, where they're following the prejudices of the conservatives, white people who look down upon them. That's one aspect of it, and then also they're also maybe trying to get back at the white people. There's a subtle aggression toward the white people and trying to get the white women. But regardless, the belief system of the white people, the stereotypes of the brown people, they're being fulfilled, because stereotypes are powerful. And again, and then the white people can say, see, that's why we colonize them, because they're horny brown people, low IQs or whatever, and they have bad karma. And then so it's like this feedback loop going on and on. And then yeah, so and then you'll see it with some of the Persian people too. Like some of the Persian people who become Christians, then they'll be really against Arabs. They'll be really against Islam. But are they really against Islam? They're against brown people, and they love the white people. And then I saw that with Baha'i too. So some of the Baha'i people, they'll treat black people, they'll look kind of down upon them, but then they'll look highly upon white people, because that's a whole conservative mentality. It's feeling bad for the victimizers, the group in power, and it's trying to blame the victim. Once they feel bad for the group in power, and then they want to say, okay, it was their fault, and then they blame the victim. They think that they were the problem, and then they mistreat them and they continue to mistreat them, and that is difficult being the victim. It's difficult getting out of that, uh, getting out of that hole, and then yeah, yeah. I know this. There's this white guy who I know. Like I told you about him. I got in a fight with him, but he talked about, like, I was in a tent with him one time and he was saying, "Oh, I don't want any black people in the tent with us," and we're with Indian guys, right? So the Indian guys, some of them are conservative too, right? So I don't want any black people in our tent, you know. And then he's also talking. So he has that kind of a bullyish, uh, immature type of mentality, kind of predatory, putting down, belittling people, uh, pretty insecure, trying to put himself up. So that's his belief system based around what group he thinks he belongs to. But also he's done a lot of drugs, so his brain's probably screwed up. So that affects his thinking process. His ego becomes fragile, and we don't want to blame drug users, and we don't want to we don't want to marginalize drug users, but it can have effects like that. So then, so he's like that, and then he's like, now he loves, and he'll post things about how the Holocaust wasn't real. Why would he want to believe that? It's because he's a white guy, and he wants to have beliefs that make white people feel better. So he's, oh yeah, the Holocaust didn't happen, and the gas chamber's not real and stuff like that. So he's a white guy, he belongs to that group, so he wants to believe that, and because that makes him feel better about himself, it's good for his group. And then, like, recently he's like posting stuff on Nick Cannon, like, oh, like posting things like, oh, I love Nick Cannon, yeah, because Nick Cannon said things about the Jews, right? So um, it's kind of just like immature, predatory um, behavior. It's the victim blaming behavior. Um, yeah, but basically, yeah, the all lives matter people. It's again blaming the victim. It's saying, what they're basically saying is, yeah, oh, all lives matter. You guys are the reason why you guys are treated bad is because you think you're special. Because so that itself is immature behavior. That itself is not the flow. That's very ego oriented. Uh, somebody who has a mature mentality would try to listen. Okay, maybe the people are trying to uh, bring to light some serious issues that are going on with this Black Lives Matter stuff. Maybe there is um, some negative things going on for Black people, and maybe we should be considerate and attentive, and rather than try to demean or deny what they're trying to say or dismiss it, and then blame them, because and then say, oh no, the reason why they're treated bad is because they think they're special, and they're actually the racists, and we're not racist because we try to let go of, we just work hard, we just work hard, and we have high IQs, and so we're not racist because we don't bring up race. um, but then they are racist, like most of them. uh, but then they use that as a victim blaming strategy. So they negate and they invalidate what they're saying. And then they say, see, the reason why they're treated bad is because they think they're special. They have egos. Like, I transcended my ego. That if you're talking like that, that shows that you're not transcending any ego. You're just victim blaming and you're being an ass. Um, they're trying to discredit them.